story. Once upon a time, a man got fucked. Now, how is that for a story? Because that's the story of black people in America. Shit.
Yes. And it goes on from there. A 5-minute monologue that was one of the most riveting pieces of television I had seen in a while. That was on a show called American Gods. That was Mr. Nancy, played by the gentleman that I'm about to introduce. He's no longer on that show. To their detriment, let me welcome the illustrious, the accomplished Orlando Jones.
Deep bows, my lady. Deep
Now,
bows.
listen, I've been following you since before Sleepy Hollow. You know, you're that dude. And Sleepy Hollow, I was mad that you weren't on that because that was my show. And then Bahari, I think, left as well. And I was like, the hell with it. It needs to go down in flames. And it did. Then American Gods. And I was like, how are they going to let this man be this black? And apparently they didn't.
I crossed the line somewhere along the way. I got too black and too real or something. I always find it funny because I'm like, well, that was the character you handed me. That was the character I wanted to play. And now you mad that people like the black character? I mean, people ain't mad at you about Mr. Nancy. The only persons who are mad about Mr. Nancy are the people who make the show. Everybody else of all races, creeds, colors, religions, are, excited about the character and can see the natural parallels, but also understand that, what Neil Gaiman's book, American Gods, is really about is what America is and what America worships, and that we manifest what we believe. And there are too many neo-Confederate, alt-right holdovers from old regimes that still fundamentally believe we're second-class citizens. And if that's the belief you hold, then those are the actions you take.
How much of that dialogue, and I already probably know the answer to this, so let me ask it differently. What was the process of writing those? Because you had several powerful monologues. That was the one in the hold of a ship, slave ship. You had another one with the other gods. I think it was in a morgue or something, and you guys are talking.
In the funeral home.
In the funeral home. What was your process for writing those monologues?
So first, I got a shout out to Brian Fuller and Michael Green. They wrote the slave ship monologue, Mr. Nancy's introduction. They were running the show at that time. And, I credit them for giving me the leeway to breathe the life into it the way that I wanted to. But we had one conversation, and they were like, you knock it out, and that was it. So those words in that first speech are Brian Fuller and Michael Green. In the funeral home and anything in second season, that's predominantly me and Rodney Barnes. The funeral home in particular is probably more heavily me, but Rodney Barnes absolutely was my counterpart. He was a co-executive producer on the show, and he was somebody who I really enjoyed working with and who could assist me in the authorship of Mr. Nancy. But frankly, for season 2, once Neil Gaiman came to me and said, hey, can you write a character Bible for Mr. Nancy? And then said, I love this, spread it around, and I found myself writing, Bilquis, Ibis, Mr. Nancy, Laura Moon, Salim and the Jinn, New Media, Mr. World, Sam Blackcrow. I mean, at that point, I was producing and running the show along with, some other talented producers, Chris Byrne and Lisa Kussner. Ian McShane was really the only support I had, and the studio, Fremantle and Dante Di Laurento were a complete nightmare from start to finish.
Why do you think that is? As we look, even before George Floyd, even before all of this happened, we had a string of things that would have told you, if you're listening to the drum beat, that we're headed towards something. And even the reaction to Mr. Nancy, because I was on Twitter when folks were they were sharing your monologues like they were life. As you're seeing this happen, why then? And it's weird. It's almost like you cut off your nose to spite your face, or you don't really want to have the success at the expense of what exactly? Your power, your perceived, position? Like, why would they get rid of a character that seemed to be actually tapping into what was happening in America?
I would add on to that and say, why would you get rid of a character that is going to hurt you fiscally as an executive, as you have a relationship with your viewers and a relationship with the stock price of the company that you work with? Why would you make a poor business decision that poor? And my answer to that is because you're a racist. There's no really, and if I'm wrong about that, then I challenge someone to give me a more plausible reason. But it was really the way they went about it that makes me say that, because the treatment was so inequitable. It was not just that, in a 4-year, 3.5-year period, I worked on American Gods 22 days. 22 days was the amount of time I worked as an actor on that show while they sat on my rights and didn't allow me to go do other things. So that's a problem. That's what Curt Flood was fighting about with free agency. For any actor, that's a problem beyond me. And my point is that whatever their reasons were, if I was too black, if I was too, you didn't like my breath, I got sweaty palms, whatever your reason is for rendering inequitable treatment upon another human being, I didn't give you any cause to do that because all I did was my job. So I look at what they did, and it doesn't make sense. You wrote and created Mr. Nancy, Neil Gaiman. I came into a monologue that was pre-written for me. You didn't write any of the characters of color, be they LGBTQ plus, be they Asian, be they black, be they female, white or black. You didn't write any of your disenfranchised characters. And I understand why you did that. And it is a problem that is in the system of how those types of companies do business. And that is institutional racism in terms of how it plays itself out in the entertainment business. And I am not the one, or I should say, I am not the only one to have accused Fremantle of this. Gabrielle Union has made the same accusations. Nick Cannon has made the same accusations. Mel B has made the same accusations. At the Edinburgh Film Festival in 2018, the sexual harassment, sexual abuse, and allegations that the wonderful Michaela Cole, who created the show Chewing Gum on Netflix, outlined that she suffered at the hands of a company under the control of Fremantle, are absolutely despicable. So we're not talking about a company that hasn't had these claims before. They are no different than, Rashard Brooks, when we discovered that that's the second time that officer has discharged his weapon into somebody's back. Got some sensitivity training and back on the job. But, it's this type of behavior that we're talking about, and it's this type of behavior that we're ultimately trying to address as best we can. But the truth of the matter is these are white people's problems. You created this demon. It is yours. It is not my job to fix this problem for you. No, sir.
But we suffer under it, though. But we suffer under it. You lose a job. We don't get jobs. We don't get opportunities. So it's not just a white people problem. It's a white people problem that black people suffer under.
Absolutely. But it is a problem that is in their control to fix because they are in control of the systems that create these problems. So I say it is their problem because I want them to take that responsibility for it and pay people equitably. Pay every white man the same way you pay everybody else right now. We don't need government to make these types of moves. We will not fix COVID if we do not provide proper care to the disenfranchised. They'll always have COVID, so COVID will always be around. If we look at medical care and only treat people like me who are privileged, then we will always be in this pandemic. We have to, at some point, acknowledge that be it global warming, water scarcity, women's rights, Black Lives Matter, it doesn't matter what it is. It's all the same thing. They're all linked. It's all inequity. So I want to charge white people, not in the sense that I believe that every white person I've ever encountered is racist. There are plenty of white people who grow up in black neighborhoods and didn't get the privilege of that skin and have a much clearer sense of what we mean when we talk about these issues. But the rest of white America, and I mean this in no way to be disrespectful, doesn't know the first thing about racism. You've never experienced it. You're talking to me about something you read or something your black friend told you, but you don't know what this is any more than I know the nuances of sexism. How could I know that? I have no idea the insidious nature of what sexism does with women and black women. I heard it from the women who raised me, so I got a front row seat. I have a pretty good idea, but I didn't experience it, and I don't know it, and it's not a part of my bones on a daily basis. So let's just get real. If you really want to solve it, if you really want to attach gun violence, go to Jamaica, Queens. Find a black woman in the middle of that city that's been caring for those kids for the last 25 years that the gangs won't touch. Ask her what she needs and help her.
That's right.
And all of your professors and all of your smart people who know how to fix the criminal justice system, no, you don't. Go talk to Shaka Senghor. Go talk to Topeka K. Sams. Go talk to Stacey Bunton.
Erica Ford.
Erica Ford. Ilya Kadila. Go talk to the people who have been in this battle on the ground in their communities for 20-plus years. Ask them what they need and help them. I mean, I'm not talking about things that are difficult to do. I'm not talking about things that you need to drag government into. I'm talking about things that if you truly care, you can do right now. So that for me is why I say it doesn't matter how upset or angry I am. I tell this story not because I think it's something to be glorified, but I think it's something to consider. There was a woman named Susan Smith in South Carolina, and many moons ago, she claimed that a black man had carjacked her and taken her children. And she described what that black man looked like. There was a nationwide APB put out, and I was stopped 8 times in Charleston, South Carolina, as a student at the College of Charleston. There were never any less than 15 cops there. There were always guns drawn. They always instructed me what to do and how to do it. They always made it very clear that they would blow my brains out if I did not do exactly what they were telling me to do. And once they got their hands on me, they whip you to the ground, really close to the car, on the off chance that your head might hit, and you're pretty much unconscious when you hit the ground. And then they ask you questions with their knee in your back, and if what you do is give them any sass, they grab you by your throat to let you know who's in charge. Now, I had been taught how to deal with that situation. My mother prepared me. I was raised by women who loved me and who did not want that to happen to me and wanted me to understand what the consequences were of having a smart mouth in the wrong situation. So I walked out of all those situations alive. I don't hate white people. In fact, I joined the police force as a deputy sheriff in Plaquemine County, Louisiana. Spent a year down there shooting and thought I was hanging out with all these officers, a lot of them were black. I'm going to do the Jackie Robinson, you know. I'm going to try and make my change from the inside. I'm going to talk. My point in saying all that is that I have no bone to pick. But I still know what that is. I still know that ain't right. I still know they violated my human rights. I still understand why people want to defund the police department. And I still fundamentally understand that there's an infrastructure in place that goes from the officers to the lieutenants and sergeants and captains that protect them, to the politicians who believe that over-policing these areas that you've already gerrymandered and you've already sent funds away from these areas to other areas. There's an entire system in place that is designed to hurt those people. And we know that it's there. That this isn't really anything to argue about. It's been there for a very, very long time. It's the loophole in the 14th Amendment, because if you're incarcerated, you get to work for no money and be a slave. So, again, these aren't new ideas. I'm not saying anything that's interesting. Everything I'm saying, you can research it. It's very simple. It's fact. It has no component of fake news. It's just the history of America. I know it. You know it. Do something.
Orlando, thank you. That was thank you for sharing that. And I just kind of wanted to ask something about that happened to you. By the way, I'm Cena. I'm just a co-host on Thursdays. I'm just a very simple man. Just a big
There's
fan
no
of yours.
jest here, Cena Ghaznavi. It's the 13th Amendment. I just want to correct
that's
that.
your game?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm just a co-host. A simple, humble man.
Simple little man. Yeah. I'm just sweating. The new showrunner said something that Mr. Nancy's anger was not what the black community needed. And I wanted to just ask you, as an Iranian American, I see a lot of white paternalism around a lot. And a lot of people see me because I'm adjacent, of course. And then they'll be like, Cena, don't you think, what do you think about this idea? And I just wanted to ask you, how do you see that playing out in Hollywood? How can you comment kind of on that white paternalism as it exists in Hollywood? Because there's got to be a lot of producers and showrunners are like, I've got an idea. Here's how we'll fix it.
I've been through a lot of diversity movements in Hollywood. I've never seen any of them accomplish much except anointing a new class of folks who are meant to be the tokens. If what we're going to do is tell diverse stories, that means that the storytellers have to be diverse. And if that's going to happen in the entertainment business, that means that the guilds have to diversify their memberships. Otherwise, you can't do that job because all of these shows are regulated by Writers Guild members and Screen Actors Guild members and Directors Guild members. And if you're not a guild member, as these guilds are 90% white and overwhelmingly male, with less than 5% of their membership really working, it's difficult to infiltrate the system if you can't solve that particular problem. And so from a business standpoint, that's the challenge that studios have. No matter what they think, those memberships have to change. And the only way you can get in that membership is by working on a television show that is in fact a Writers Guild show. So it's a particularly closed loop. So when I look at a gentleman like Chick Egley, who's from Boston and considers himself to be woke and, wants to let you know that he supports the Black Panthers and wants to let you know that he understands diversity and wants to let you know that he writes from a black male perspective. All that's fine, but you're not a black man. So for someone like a Chick Egley, there's an arrogance and there's a core racism in saying something as arrogant as I write from a black male's perspective. There is a sense of comfort that drove him to talk to all of these other writers in Hollywood because it didn't dawn on him that I've been in the Writers Guild for over 25 years and I'm tenured, and you're talking to people who I used to work with, who were calling me saying, do you know this guy? This guy is saying weird stuff about you. I've known you for 25 years. What's that about? So I began to get information back about what he was saying through people I've known like that who didn't even have a dog in this fight. But I wasn't going to call the studio and the network and attack that situation. What for? I mean, this isn't my first time experiencing racism in the workplace. There's no reason to throw a bomb on that, frankly. But in this particular case, to essentially fire me 2 weeks before production starts because you want to write Mr. Nancy at the end of the day. You don't want me to be the author of Mr. Nancy because Mr. Nancy is the most celebrated character on the show. You want to be the author of Mr. Nancy so you can take credit for that. And that ego, that drive is all it's about. And the studio doesn't care about Mr. Nancy because they said that to the showrunners who created the show. We care about these white characters. We don't care about these other characters. And that was clear. Mr. Nancy's number 18 on the call sheet. So he's not the character that you're supposed to care about. And so all of those things came together, and all of those institutions who decide which actor you should care about and which actor you shouldn't care about are the things that drove them to my circumstances. So to answer your question succinctly, Hollywood needs to address that, and it isn't hiring every brand new, fresh out the box, diverse voice they can find. there are plenty of black women who have been in Hollywood for a very long time. Maya Williams is a gifted writer. I worked with her back on Rock. Judy McCreary was Dick Wolf's right hand in the creation of the longest-running one-hour television show in history, Law and Order SVU. A black woman was a key architect in that show and the writer of that show for many moons. But, you know, Judy McCreary doesn't have another show on right now. So the problem isn't talent. The problem isn't talent that has been able to work within the system. The problem is the fraternity of complete nepotism that Hollywood ultimately is.
There are outliers. There's Tyler Perry, who has built a whole ass studio outside of the framework of Hollywood, doing it his own way, and to a lot of success. There are, you know, Ava DuVernay's and Issa Rae's, and who's leveraged her power to get more opportunities for more people, Lena Waithe, and others. Is that the path for us? Is that more of a, because we're the talent, or we're the ones with the vision and the talent? Maybe the thing is to do for ourselves, or do it ourselves. Do we need the guild or the guilds?
I think the guild plays an important role, and I think it's always important not to tear down existing infrastructures when you can use those infrastructures to create good. Creating an infrastructure is a very, very difficult thing. You know, when I look at even how our former president, the wonderful Mr. Barack Obama, handled the situation of health care, there's a fair case to be made that you could have funded Medicaid and Medicare and extended the coverage that those programs already gave to the 30 million Americans that you were looking to bring into the system, rather than trying and build an entirely new system, which took years to build. So I think the guilds play an incredibly important role in understanding that this is a complex problem, and it has to be solved in the same way that it was built. The system was built systemically. So we must build our solutions systemically, and that's not just profiting on a showrunner of color, because all the showrunners you've named, for the most part, don't own anything. That content belongs to the studio and the network, and they might own some, you know, AGR definition on the show, but they don't own any significant portion of any of those shows. So when you look at Ivan Reitman, a creator like that, Ivan Reitman owns Animal House. It's his movie. Mm-hmm. When you look at Roger Corman's work and Silent Hill and all the movies that he made over the years, and how he was able to take an unusual talent like Jack Nicholson and give him work when the system didn't give him work, well, he owns that catalog of film. So none of us are owners, so I'm always an advocate that we should absolutely unequivocally own, and I don't think trying to get Hollywood to understand why they should do something. They know it's in their financial best interest. The whole thing is built on that. They don't care. And they have so much money, it doesn't really matter. And that's not to denigrate Hollywood in any way. Hollywood has been, you know, kind to me. I'm one of the people who Hollywood has accepted, okay? So I'm not attacking it in that way. I'm just calling it out for what it is. I don't own those shows. I made people billions of dollars. I can still get treated like a second-class citizen and not have anyone come to my rescue. So what good is the friendship if no one stands up for you?
So why, you know, you have been treated very well. You know, as you pointed out, you live well. You're one of those people that have, quote unquote, made it. So why not bite your tongue and get along so that you know, like, how much of being raised in South Carolina and Alabama and having that experience that you had with them, you know, during the Susan Smith situation, how much of that has framed who you are? Because you do not bite your tongue.
I have a very simple choice to make. I've encountered many things that were racist throughout the course of my life. And sometimes it's been really pointed, as in the situation with American Gods, but many times it's been innocent. They just didn't know any better. And I'm not going to hold somebody accountable in that way when they were trying to give me a compliment and didn't realize seriously, enough. So I don't hold anything in my heart like that. It's just, I understand that I love racists, I love homophobes, I like all these people too, because we all have somebody in our family that has some type of ism. We all do. and we love that person. We know them a different way. So this isn't about an us versus them, and it's certainly not about getting rid of those people like they need to be expunged. That's not, for me, that's a ridiculous notion. But it does mean that we need to wrap our hands and our arms around those individuals and usher them out of positions of power and control, because they are doing damage systemically. They are perpetuating that damage, and we can no longer afford to do that. So I don't bite my tongue because this was my great-great-grandfather's fight, my great-grandfather and grandmother's fight, my grandmother's fight, my father and mother's fight, my auntie's fight. Now it's my fight. It's their fight, because pigment automatically means that they are worth less. Pigment and gender automatically mean they are worth less. So they are not valued the same way white women are. Period. End of story. Go look at the pay stubs at any company and see how they pay their black woman and see how they pay their white woman. So if I don't stand up, then I leave them to walk into the situation. I think it is my role and it is my duty as a parent and as a citizen and as someone who truly believes in human rights to put whatever apathy I had before aside and get involved in my local community to try and create the change that I want to see. Go to your city council meeting, vote, but you need to get involved in your local community. If there's a charity you want to help, I can guarantee you there's somebody in your community that's been trying to get somebody to listen to them for 15, 20 years. That's how I stumbled upon this Mike Adams situation. There were a bunch of ladies in a Facebook group, faculty, alumni, students, all who had suffered at the hands of a criminology professor at the University of North Carolina, Wilmington, who is a neo-Confederate. 20 years, this man has been in the system teaching criminology. So what is he doing? He's educating the people who go into our court system to hand down disproportionate sentences. Because part of the teaching, of his religious teaching, that he spends his summers learning from Summit Group, Summit Ministries that he works with in Colorado, is they teach feminism is anti, it's against God, because feminism teaches you not to listen to a white male God, and they're made in God's image. They teach you that the LGBTQ plus community, that community is, they're sodomites, they are pedophiles. You target them, you get rid of them. They are evil, they have a sickness. You teach that black people are second class, Latino people are second class citizens in the name of Jesus, of course, in the name of God. And you do so with humor, and you do so with a pinch of grace and humility. And then you hide behind the First Amendment and say you have the right to have people like Eli Mosley come to the University of Georgia, the University of Florida, and have him be a speaker while they openly recruit white supremacists. They say it. They literally say, we're here to recruit European white males. We're a club for them, for you to understand that diversity and multiculturalism are anti-white and are an attack on white people. So that's a system. They got a show on the road. They got the people who are teaching it. They're organizing things like Charlottesville. He's influencing policy and putting people in places in the criminal justice system because he's an educator. He's using the First Amendment with another group of people who believe what he does is pay for all of his legal fees for him to sue the University of North Carolina, Wilmington, and win, and have the court say that he has a right to say the vile things he does. And for 20 years, this man is harassed, stalked. He has a bullied. He has a group of online, really cyber bullies, right? He calls them his flying monkeys. What do? Some of them follow you and take pictures and video you to let you know you're being followed. They make death threats. They're always on your social media, so they attack you in multiple different ways to make sure you have the sense that you're being watched, and at any point they can snatch the life out of you. So for 20 years, this man has done that. He's gone on Sean Hannity. He's gone on Glenn Beck. He's written articles on Town Hall. He has been celebrated for attacking queer Muslim jihadists and faculty members that brought the LGBTQ plus community onto the campus and had speakers, minors, doxing, just enough information so his flying monkeys have plausible deniability in figuring out who you are and coming after you. And the university and the chancellor and other faculty have supported that man. The former governor of North Carolina who made that HB2 bathroom law that was so despicable that Hollywood and companies ran from North Carolina supports that man. The city manager supports that man. We all know that. We all know they are connected. Those individuals need to be summarily removed from the system and placed with people who do not hold their bias. So that's why, for me, I'm speaking out against Mike Adams, because my children go to summer camp there at the University of North Carolina, Wilmington. What, you're going to see them on campus and decide that why not go after them the way you've gone after anyone else? They fit the description.
I want to keep having this conversation because you've been a warrior for a while. I think it's in your DNA. It's who you are, Orlando Jones. The Orlando Jones is where you can follow him. This Mike Adams guy, it's gaining traction because of you. Other celebrities are coming out to also say, why does this man have a job? And we're going to put our might here behind making sure that this man gets sat down, as you said, everybody around him, because, again, this is a system.
As should the chancellor. They have to go sit down. I mean, for the chancellor of the University of North Carolina, Wilmington's response after the George Floyd bomb went off to the black students was all lives matter. That's what this Brazilian chancellor said. And looking at the race situation in Brazil, who was also marching in the name of George Floyd, and the own abuses that have happened in their own country, Brazil having a very similar classism and racism to the United States. I'm like, oh, you brought a racist with the Latin last name in here. Clever.
We see you. Yes, we see you.
We see you.
We see you. What are you working on now, sir? Where can we see you?
You can see me. The Good Lord Bird is actually about to come out, which I'm really excited about. The amazingly incomparable and kind and talented Ethan Hawke. I can't say enough good things about that man.
Looks good. Really that looks so good. I saw that. I saw previews for it.
Yeah.
It is off the chain. You're in that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I play the Rail Man, based on James Avery's incredible book of the same name, The Good Lord Bird. And, for me, it was just about getting an opportunity to play this part of history that we don't talk about. So I'll briefly tell you what got me excited about that. And then on Sci-Fi Channel tonight, you can see Sci-Fi Wire, I'm doing The Great Debates, and we are geeking out over some fandom stuff, so you can see me there. And that'll be on Sci-Fi tonight, and then Good Lord Bird is coming up. But The Railman, for me, was because I heard a story I'd never heard before. When I read it in the novel, I was floored. You think about what John Brown was trying to do. John Brown was a white abolitionist that fervently believed that slavery was a sin against God. He believes that he was anointed by God and protected by God to fight against slavery. So if John Brown rolled up on a situation and he came up on some black slaves indentured to some white folk, he emancipated them before he left. And if he had to murder all of the white people there to do it, he did that, and you were summarily emancipated. And he did so with calm because he believed he was anointed by God. So while people were shooting at John Brown, he would be casually talking to his group. You grab this, throw that over there, bam, bullets whizzing by. He is completely calm, having a conversation. So Ethan Hawke plays that man, and he emancipates a young man. And the young man that he emancipates, he mistakes for a young girl. And the young man thinks it's probably better not to let him know that he's really a boy because he won't have to do as much work if he's pretending to be a girl. And suddenly their relationship is born. The story is told through that young man's eyes. That's Joshua Caleb Johnson plays Onion. And the railman is really sort of the key to the Underground Railroad. When you think about how mail was delivered during that period in history, there was one overnight company. It was called Adams Express Company. You could ship a package from Richmond, Virginia to Philadelphia overnight. It took 27 hours. Otherwise, it took 3 days because steam trains had to refill every couple of miles. So every 15, 20 minutes, you had to stop, and it only went 25 miles an hour. So it took news a ways to travel. So John Brown's conundrum was, how do I get this message to the slaves? I'm going to go to the armory in Virginia. I'm going to steal all the weapons. I'm going to emancipate the slaves, and the slaves will be my army and help me do it. But how do I let the slaves know to come down to the armory, and the ones on the plantations are going to have a tough time? So I need people who are trying to run away, and I need people to come from the north, and I need the railman to help me. So here's where it got interesting for me. At no point have I ever seen a story where during the times of slavery that there was a black man in a position of power who had a family and who was using and mitigating and working within the system while working against the system. So he was friends with the mayor and saw the mayor as a decent man. But his family had been split up and sold off, and he was trying to buy them back. And now John Brown was about to show up and cause a revolution. And when that happens, you send all the slaves that got a taste of freedom to another plantation. Otherwise, they'll continue to try and escape. All of that is what comes together, at least when my character sort of shows up on the scene of this crazy tale. But I'd never seen that character. And that character is not a victim. And for me, that's the problem. That was the power of Mr. Nancy, is he's not a victim. He's not telling you a slavery story. He has no problem with everybody on that boat burning themselves to death in the name of worship to him. He's not necessarily good.
No,
he just uses
not.
the truth to get you to do what he wants you to do in the name of him, of course. He's a God. You're immortal. You're not in the same game with him. So that's a huge part of how I think we behave, right? That's a huge part of, I think, those individuals that profit off of oppression. And let's be honest, that's how the country was founded. And let's be honest, it continues on today. And that's why there have been no reparations. And that's why the discussion is disgusting anytime you hear it to the people who have been making money and don't have any interest in sharing it. So to play that type of character and to do so in a story that has a white man who is fervently against slavery, to flip those components that way at this time, and for us to possibly begin a conversation that doesn't begin with race, but actually begins with just how do we build a better world for our children, you know, as the young folks say, for real, for real.
For real, for
How
real.
do we, for real, for real? How do we do that for real, for real?